Hi, I'm Dan Sanguinetti,
And I am Russell Lee.
and this is Film Rhapsody. In this episode, Russell and I talk to Goulburn-based filmmaker Michael Watson, who has been my filmmaking partner in crime for well over a decade.
We dive in on another walk down memory lane, talking about Dan and Mike's early projects including Theatre of the Dead, Love Stuck, the Improvised Feature, and Mike working closely with Jim Jefferies on Me and My Mates versus the Zombie Apocalypse. Okay, it's ringing.
Whoa.
Michael, it's Russell from Canberra. How you doing?
How you going, buddy?
Not too bad. Dan's here as well. Say hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hey, Dad.
So what are you doing tonight? Boring. Hang
Not
up.
much. I'm waiting.
I'm glad you did that. I'm going to call him back. Sorry, Michael. How did you enjoy being part of our first podcast prank call?
It was fantastic.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah.
Hang up again.
No, I'm not going to hang up again. I've actually taken the phone away from Russell. Yeah. But yeah, no, Michael.
Welcome to the show.
One day,
Thank you.
One day soon, we will get you to come and be in the studio when you don't have dad and husband duties. For now, I mean, what we're doing at the moment, as you've probably been listening, is we're just trying to get to know people, I guess, and get a sense of the story of what we are as filmmakers. So why don't you share a little bit about your I guess, our filmmaking journey? Because we've been making movies since, 2000 and
9
something stupid?
Seven, I think 2007.
Really? Jesus, I didn't actually think it was that early, but yeah, you're probably right.
That was Distracted, wasn't it?
Yeah, Distracted.
It was a good experience.
Yeah, we learnt a lot on that, and I learnt a lot, I guess, from a different number of levels. We met each other when we were working at Prime.
Yeah,
and
we did.
Prime Television, that is.
Yeah, Prime Television, and
Yeah,
and then when we both
which is now Prime 7.
Yeah, Prime 7, and then when we both sort of left, that's when I think we just kept.
Is that when the station went downhill?
No, I don't know, probably. Yeah. We left.
We left about the same time, and that's when you decided to start Sanguinetti Media.
Yeah.
And I think we'd done a couple of little things like before you decided that, but then you just were like, let's get on board. And
it kind of led to Theatre of the Dead pretty soon after that, because what was happening in the Canberra film industry at the time, people were trying to collaborate and put themselves into different groups that can sort of encourage more film production. I mean, it didn't all work out, but it did result in Theatre of the Dead, which led to a lot of friendships that we've actually continued and still work with today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess a question I have about Theatre of the Dead is, what would you say was your strongest memory from that film shoot? It was somewhat of a significant shoot because we shot it in 17 days back to back. It was a volunteer love of filmmaking deal, and so the fact that we were all there for 17 days and not a single walk-off set, if that's the right way to put it, where everyone who started on day one was there at day 17.
Well, obviously, being a zombie in a scene was pretty cool. Actually, a couple of scenes. But I think you only see me in the one scene where I come busting through a door. And then in the behind the scenes of that, trip ass over up the stairs and everyone else fell on top of me. That was pretty fun. I don't know. It's just a whole bunch of things just all mixed together, really. Just the whole experience, I think, was just something I hadn't been part of anything of that scale before. And it was just, such a eye-opening experience, which then led to obviously going to Cannes for the film market. So You know,
Yeah, that's right.
without that wouldn't have happened. So
That trip still feels like a dream, to be honest. Us going to Cannes and the Marché du Film, I think, was perhaps one of the life-changing experiences that we got to have as filmmakers, because it just gave us so much perspective of what our industry is really about, rather than sort of what we can assume from our little city. We got to experience what other people are doing and how they approach things, and we got to see the scale of the film industry.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me, was just how many people are trying to sell their many films. You know, a lot of people only think about the big budget sort of films, I guess, if you're not sort of, I guess, in the industry or a big film fan. You don't understand how many films are actually being made and trying to be sold across the world.
Yeah,
I think that was the biggest thing that I took away, was just how tiny it made made it sort of seem.
Yeah, I mean, like, the experience put us in our place, basically.
Yeah.
I guess the result of that was sort of what led to the next action, which led to the next action. I mean,
how do you
cause and
stay
effect.
positive after that?
I can tell you what, I don't know what Michael's felt. I know you were like exhausted, because on that plane trip back, I remember you just sleeping for most of it. I'm pretty sure I did too, but I was
hungover.
I was so deflated. Like, I shouldn't have been. Like, we just had this amazing experience, but getting home, I was just like I don't know, it felt so different afterwards, that I guess you go in there with just like sort of eye wide, childlike excitement for being a filmmaker.
You lost your innocence.
And then, I lost my innocence, and then we got back, and it was like, you know, it's like your favorite magic trick got shown how it was done, and now it's just the magic's gone. It was like an absolute reality changer, yeah. But it helped focus, I think, and it really did lead to the next project that we did, which, interestingly, wasn't me and my mates.
Yeah, that's right.
We got contacted not long after Cannes, I think. It was from a Sydney filmmaker named Murray Fay. And Murray has a long background in improvised performance. He's an improviser actor, but he's also he's got a number of films that he's produced over the years. He's a little bit older than us, so a little bit more wiser, you could say.
Michael, it's Russell.
Hey, Russell.
Hey, man. So was this before you left Canberra for Goulburn?
Yeah, a long time before.
Dan?
Oh, is that all we had? I gave you the power of the microphone, and you asked.
I got more questions, but I'm trying to do it in chronological order.
Oh, okay.
The thing I remember actually very clearly from shooting that film was it was in the middle of winter.
Oh, yeah.
And if anyone else that's not from Canberra knows how cold Canberra can be in winter. And early in the morning, setting up shot for that day's scene, and my fingers being so numb that I couldn't press the record button properly because it just wouldn't depress the button. I just couldn't feel anything.
It was a particularly cold winter, that one. Lovestuck was literally a feature film with no script, and so when you have no scripts, you have no idea what the actors are going to do, and therefore Mike and I, who are both on camera and we're filming at exactly the same time, how do we cover
each other's shots?
Well, we have to stay out of each other's shots, and how do we connect it together so that it makes sense? And I mean, we're thinking like how it might be edited while we're shooting it, as well as, you know, trying to capture the scene and making sure the coverage is there, knowing that we've basically got one take. Now, we did a few takes, but it was confusing.
Murray had an idea of where he wanted the overall story to go, so he had little tiny comments he would give to each actor in the scene, but only if it was something important, only one of the actors would know what they were going to say, because Murray wanted them to say it, so that was a true reaction from the other actor.
Kind of sounds like the same process they use for Blair Witch.
Yeah, well, I guess Blair Witch was
a
film without a script in a way as well. But yeah, I mean, Lovestuck was obviously a romance, so it was You know, there were a number of different characters, and there was a message that obviously was trying to get across. And I mean, and this is the thing, and this is where it resulted, because we kept capturing each other on camera. Like, there's the camera operator, there's the camera operator. One of the tricks that I was so impressed with what Murray did was that the film identified the fact that it was being shot. It was a film. And so it was like part documentary. We established there's a crew. We established that it's an improvised script. It established that no one knows what's going to happen, and we're just going to follow the action. And it kind of actually connected really well, which gave Michael a basically an acting credit in the film, because he turns up like with dialogue and everything, and you're just like, oh, what Russian dialogue, Michael?
What dialogue did you have?
It was
like, shit, I can't feel my hands.
I think you actually do say something about the cold in the film.
Yeah, probably did actually. I don't remember. I only saw it once. I actually wouldn't mind seeing it again.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, that hasn't ended up on any streaming sites yet. It got a cinema release, which was really cool.
We went up to Sydney to do that Q&A.
Yeah.
With some people that were given tickets.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
and we actually had quite a lot of questions, which was really good to see.
Yeah, no, I was really surprised by obviously the audience reaction, and even before the podcast recording, Russell and I were looking at some reviews for the film, and I was like, oh wow, this got reviewed by David Stratton.
No, really?
Yeah, and I'm just like, wow. Obviously, Margaret didn't have a say, but I mean, it was really cool that David had it, and he actually gave it a pretty good review.
That's awesome.
Which is quite honourable, I guess, to one of Australia's most famous film critics to review your film and actually say this is not too bad at all. I mean, it was pretty well received by the community and the improvised community.
But that's the thing, it's so interesting shooting something like that when you have absolutely no idea what it's going to look like until you see the finished product.
Yeah.
And I mean, it did take a long time for that to happen, but it's great that it actually did happen.
Yeah.
And was well received. And yeah, I was actually quite pleasantly surprised when we went and saw it. A little bit after that, Murray actually contacted us again. I don't know if Dan remembers.
Yeah, I remember.
He wanted to do an improvised pilot for a TV show. I can't remember what. I think Dan you were away somewhere. I think.
Yeah, I was. I think I was overseas, so yeah, I wasn't actually able to shoot it or do anything, and so Mike took the lead.
Yeah, so I took basically over the whole production of getting this thing made and getting camera operators, because he wanted it shot like The Office, because it was set in the NBN rollout.
So that would have sounded like a disaster and a half.
Yeah. So it was based around these people that were supposed to be helping to roll out the NBN, and some of them had no idea what they were doing, basically, which is true to form, really. So yeah, that was really interesting, because he brought back Gabby Millgate from Lovestuck, who people should know from Muriel's Wedding, who utters the infamous line, "You're terrible, Muriel." She's very good at her comedic timing. Her beats are really funny. But yeah, that was a challenge, because we had to shoot. I think we had 2 days to shoot, and then I had to edit the whole thing in 2 days, ready for basically that same week. I remember I think I edited for 35 hours straight or something to try and get it ready to be shown. And I mean, that was a pretty interesting experience. And he showed it at I think it was the Street Theatre, one of their little showing rooms there, and everyone seemed to really enjoy it. But these big stepping stones, they just keep getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, Me and My Mates versus Zombie Apocalypse is the biggest thing that I've been involved with so far, and that was that took in my involvement anyway, I think it was 3 years of my life. Well, probably more for Dan.
You were there at the start, when we.
Oh yeah, I was at the very first meeting with Declan with you. Yeah, right through till the end. Just didn't really have much to do with the distribution side of stuff. But yeah, we're there for pretty much 95% of it at least.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, doing that pitch was probably one of the most daunting things that
Yeah, I remember how anxious you guys were.
it was frightening to get up and actually pitch a movie to ask for money like that. It was just so new
yeah,
and
because
different, and
it had it wasn't just a practice. This was a real world situation,
yeah, and we had to,
to try and get someone to give us money. We spent a long time calling, hundreds of different people trying to get the proposal together. Calling people saying that we had this film and trying to get them to invest something, whether it be giving us free products or their time for whatever that we could put down into the budget, was quite challenging.
You put together some key elements in that side. There was the paintball gun company and the armor. So
Well, that was just like it's such a really good coincidence, really. We originally had someone else who was attached to be the armor, and Declan and I had a chat to him, and then what was it, like 2-3 weeks or something before we were supposed to start shooting, and he just disappeared. And so I was like, oh shit, what the hell are we going to do now? We need a freaking armorer. And so I just reached out to anyone I could find, and the only person that replied was John Bowring.
And who is John Bowring?
Well, yeah, at first we just thought he was just this really nice dude who said he'd come along and help us out and whatnot. And turned out that he was the premier armourer in Australia. He basically built what is considered an armourer's job here in Australia. And so he designed and owns the design of Crocodile Dundee's knife. He designed Wolverine's claws in X-Men Origins. He just did the latest Alien film, Alien Covenant, and did all the weapons on that. He did all the Matrix weapons. He's a legend. And he said that he would come and do our little silly zombie film.
Mm. And I think that was one of the great things that you really brought to the film, was because of your personality. You're so friendly and everyone loves talking to you. You kind of brought together some really talented, high-end people because they just liked you. And that's a big part of succeeding in the industry, is to be likable and to seem genuine and be genuine. And I think that's what really worked.
You can't tell that I'm blushing right now.
Well, it's true. Blush at the truth.
But yeah, but John was just the nicest freaking dude. I can't speak highly enough about that guy. And he had the best stories I've ever heard.
Yeah, well, speaking of stories, there was probably one of my favourite story moments that occurred during the filming of Me and My Mates. So we were completely honoured and grateful to have the Australian comedy legend Jim Jefferies involved in the film. To be able to bring him aboard was something truly special, and one of the proudest things I believe I achieved as a producer on this film.
Is this story going to be safe for work?
This story could be safe for work, depending on how Michael tells it.
No pressure, dude.
I'm not very good dealing with famous people, to be honest. I get starstruck. I'm really terrible with it. It took a while for me to not treat Greg Fleet as royalty. He's so down to earth, really. He's a really genuine, honest guy, and
I love Fleety.
Fleety was a pleasure to work with, really. But I also had a lot of stresses that I had to deal with. There were still financing challenges that were there. Yeah. So one of Michael's roles was to, I guess, be the producer who looked after everybody, to be more the face and to make sure that the important people felt welcome and their needs were met, I guess, if they put it that way. Mm-hmm. It's not particularly a normal producer's role, but Michael was willing to take it on because it obviously it's one of his strengths as a people person. But that also meant you getting to look after Jim Jefferies and you
becoming mates.
Yeah, well, you kind of got to hang out with him a lot. So
Yeah, it was more just making sure that they had what they needed, and
well, I mean,
if they needed anything.
it
Yeah.
was making sure they actually turned up to set.
Yeah, that too.
It was more. It wasn't about like the truth being. It wasn't
Yeah.
anything about them. It was making
Yeah.
sure that we actually had actors on set to work.
Because let's be honest, when you have Greg Fleet, Alex Williamson, and Jim Jefferies
In a
all
movie.
together, who are all notoriously known for partying,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't think there was any days that anyone was particularly late, but
There was one day. And
yeah, there was one day, but
we can let the audience pick who didn't turn
yeah,
up.
well,
It wasn't
if you
Fleety.
need, if there's any listeners that want to delve more into some of the stories from Fleety's point of view, you can grab his book, These Things Happen. He actually has a whole chapter based on his time filming me and my mates. And I actually get a mention in that chapter.
Sweet.
But yeah, so Jim Jefferies.
Yeah, Jim Jefferies. I like how you've taken this story, diverted slightly. I'm assuming you're going to bring it back now. What happened with Jim Jefferies, Michael?
Did he like
So-
Canberra?
No.
No, see, well, Jim was having a tough time because his young son, who he loved dearly and had to leave in the US, had a hernia, and he was very worried about him. And obviously, Canberra's not the most exciting place in the world when you live in LA. Yeah, so we were lucky enough actually to have him do one of his stand-up shows at the Ainsley Football Club. And what was so good about that was he was trying out all of his new material on the crowd there for his special that he was going to be shooting a few months later. What was awesome about that was we were the first audience he did his gun control bit on. And I remember that just being one of the best pieces of comedy I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, as we know now, it's become a massive viral sensation once the special came out. But yeah, it was just really cool to hear him do new material. I got to meet his parents, which was pretty interesting. But anyway, so after the show, as you normally do, there was a bit of alcohol ingested by certain people.
Everyone,
Jim being one of them. Yeah. Well, except for me because I was driving.
Oh, true.
But yeah, so there was a lot of. He got very drunk, and he tells a lot of stories when he's drunk, which are actually really interesting. But well, most people had, gone away, crew and whatnot. Even the rest of the cast. It was just Dan, myself, Jim, and Jim's manager. And Dan decided he was going to call it a night, and because obviously I was driving Jim around, so Dan went home, and so we're sitting there, and Jim turns to me and goes, "So, are there any strip clubs around?" And I was like, "Yes, there are some, but it's Monday night. I don't think there's really going to be anything open, but I'll check for you." So I looked it up, and yeah, there was nothing open. So I went back to him and was like, "Oh, sorry, Jim, because it's Monday night, doesn't look like anything's open." And there was a bit of a pause, and he was like, "Okay, what about a brothel?" And I was like, "I have no idea. I've been past them, but I've never been to one, so I would have no freaking idea." So I looked that up too, and lo and behold, there was one not too far away that was open seemingly all night. So anyway, he goes, "Yep, we're going there." So I was like, right, that's a bit strange, but sure. This is Jim Jefferies, so whatever. Jim and his manager got into my car and we drove off. All the way there, I'm thinking, what the hell is going to happen? Surely I'm just going to be sitting in the car waiting for them to come back out, because that's just weird in itself. Anyway, we get there and Jim turns to me and goes, "So, Mike, you coming in?" And so I'm like, oh, Jim's looking at me with this like eager nodding smile, which I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure. So walking up to the door, Jim was kind of going, oh, because it was really early in the morning. He's like, oh, this is going to be so bad. Like, these girls are going to be terrible or something like that. We go up to the door. This little old Asian man comes out. He's just doesn't say anything, just opens this screen door and lets us in to what can only be described as a doctor's surgery-looking waiting room from the 70s. It looked like it hadn't changed in, 40 years. And there was like two chairs. So Jim and I sat and they were facing each other. And I'm just sort of racking my brain going, what's actually going to happen here? Are we like all going in together? Are we like, is he just going to send us like one girl, like to the next one, each girl each or whatever? Anyway, so I'm sitting there and I look over at Jim and he starts rocking backwards and forwards in his chair going, oh, this is so bad. This is going to be so bad. Oh, look at the carpet. Oh, it's just so bad. And then the old man comes back and he's got one girl with him and he just goes, one girl, only one girl. And then there's silence. And then Jim just goes, nah, we're out. And we all quickly get up and leave. And as I sigh a sign of relief. Because there was that one moment when we all locked eyes and you could tell that everyone was thinking, are we going in together? Luckily, Jim was the one that was like, no, because if he hadn't said it, I would have said it. But anyway, so we get back in the car and we're driving back to the hotel, and there are some other stories, but none that can be told in public.
Until Fleety's next book.
Yeah, Fleety's next book. He actually has another book, but it's not a biography, it's a novel. Fleety is one of the funniest dudes I've ever been around. My cheeks were constantly sore from being in the smile position. Like every single moment of being around him is just hilarity.
Check out his Instagram. He's on Instagram as Greg Fleetman. So he's done so well since the film. I think his writing has really kind of changed him, and I think it's amazing that he's been able to do that.
So turning back to Alice, what are your main roles on Alice going to be?
So this will actually be my first feature film in being a full-fledged producer. I was a co-producer on Me and My Mate. So yeah, that's going to be that's interesting in itself, just being a bit more involved in everything in the creative process. Obviously learning, because I'm still learning that producer role myself. So and Dan's a good role model to have in that regard because he's been through it so many times, and and again, as I said, this stepping stone thing of things getting bigger and at least hopefully a little bit easier when we figuring things out, and so I'm really interested to see how we pull this one together. I've been actually watching a lot of low budget horror films last month, it's now November already, as part of a horror challenge that our camera operator from Me and My Mate Fish put together every year. You watch a horror movie a day basically, and this year I tried to watch ones that I'd never seen before, and it's especially low budget, just to see how other people are doing it. So hopefully I can bring some of that into Alice.
What are you hoping to see happen at the end of Alice?
Well, we want to make it look in as big a budget as we can with the limited resources. So anything, I'd love to see, just for people to see it. You know what I mean? There's going to be a lot of people involved in this film, and it's one of those things. When it's done, you want people to see the effort that everyone put in to make this. I think that's one thing people who don't make films, they don't realize how much time and effort goes into making. This actually, the other day I was filming a video for someone. They said to me they didn't realize how much went into, and this was just a little 2-minute overview video of their little function.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, I didn't realize how much effort went into making this sort of stuff. And I was like, 2-minute video, I was there for a couple hours, so I had a couple hours worth of footage, and like they just didn't realize that so much went into that. And I was like, yeah, times that by 1,000 million when you're doing a feature film. So yeah, just people watching it, there's just so much effort goes into them. There's a reason why credits are so long at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
All those people gave up their time, especially in low budget ones. Most bigger ones, obviously everyone's getting paid, but low budget, that's not always the case. And so the best reward for people on low budget is just for people to see them.
So, Mike, I guess something that we are trying to strive for through this podcast is to sort of get a sense of what we can pass on to our peers and our friends and, you know, those who are starting out in the industry. Obviously, being very aware that we are always learning and we're always growing. But what's some advice you could pass on to someone who wants to be a filmmaker?
For someone wanting to become a filmmaker, I'd say just get out there, do something. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's just a little video for, I don't know, TikTok or, you know, your story on Facebook, you know, just do something. Get out there with your camera. You know, phones all have cameras these days. Just get out there and do something. Then go find the wider community. You know, the majority of us are very approachable. You know, we'll definitely have a conversation with you about, you know, whatever you want to talk about. You know, we're not scary. We just want to make cool stuff with everyone. And so that's my biggest advice, would just be get out there, look for those little short film competitions. And it doesn't matter if, you know, you don't think your entry's up to scratch. Just put it in anyway, because you never know. Someone else might think different. And I think the other biggest thing is just to listen to everyone else's point of view. Filmmaking is such a collaborative medium. There's so many different voices, and I think sometimes some people can take their voice a bit too serious, like their word is gospel maybe. But I think it's very important to listen to everyone's ideas and point of view, because in the end, it's ultimately going to make your projects better than just having your one view.
So, Michael, yeah, I mean, thanks for spending some time with us, sharing a bit about, you know, our shared history and obviously sharing your advice there. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I don't know when I'll see you next. I'll come down and make a drive down to Goulburn, maybe soon.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll let you go. But as you're going, could you compliment me again, please? Michael?
Hello.
Michael?
Mike? Oh, he hung up. Serves you right.
But I want my compliment.
In the next episode of Film Rhapsody, I catch up with one of Canberra's strongest voices in our film industry, a filmmaker who earlier this year won Best Australian Animation at Flickerfest and is the founder of Lights Canberra Action, Marissa Martin.
Film Rhapsody is produced by Dan Sanguinetti and Russell Lee for Sanguinetti Media. Head to sanguinettimedia.com.au to subscribe to all our episodes.
Oh, I didn't record it.